The Epistle to the Hebrews, Part 5, God's Perfect Spokesman. 2. God's Spokesman in these last days. A. The expression in these last days, 1. Literally, at the end of these days, which may be understood as referring to either A. The closing period of the Jewish age, B. The period of the Messiah. 2. The Old Testament often spoke of the last days, Isaiah 2:2, Micah 4:1. 3. As such, it often had special reference to the age of the Messiah. A. The apostles spoke of their time as the time of this fulfillment, Acts 2:16 and 17. B. Thus it denotes the final phase of history, brought on by the first coming of Christ, continuing until his second coming and the consummation of all things, Hebrews 9:26, 1 Peter 1:20, and 1 Corinthians 10:11. B. God has spoken to us by his Son. 1. God has spoken once again, but note the contrast. 2. In time past it was through prophets, but in these last days it is by his Son. A. God has sent his own Son to speak for him. B. As wonderful as the prophets were, how can they compare to God's own Son? C. The excellence of God's perfect spokesman. 1. Jesus is the appointed heir of all things. A. The author may have had Psalms 2:8 in mind, for in verse 5 he quotes from Psalms 2:7. B. As the beloved Son, it is only natural that he would be the appointed heir. C. What does all things include? 1. All that the Father has, John 16:15. 2. The authority to raise and judge the dead, John 5:26 through 29. 3. The authority to rule in heaven and on earth, Matthew 28:18. 4. This authority Christ has even now, Acts 2:36, 10:36, Ephesians 1:20 through 22, 1 Peter 3:22, and Revelations 1:5. 2. Jesus is through whom he, God, also made the worlds. A. Not only the heir, but also the creator. B. For it was through the Son that God created the universe, John 1:3 and Colossians 1:16. 1. All things were created by or through him. He is the creator. 2. All things were created for him. He is the rightful heir. 3. Jesus is the brightness of his, God's glory. A. In Jesus we see the very radiance of the glory of God. B. As John wrote, we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, John 1:14. C. When we behold Jesus, we see an extension of the glory of God. 4. Jesus is the express image of his, God's person. A. He is the exact representation of God's being and character, Colossians 2:9. B. Therefore, Jesus could say, 1. To Thomas, if you had known me, you would have known my Father also, and from now on you know him and have seen him, John 14:7. 2. To Philip, he who has seen me has seen the Father, John 14:9. 5. Jesus is upholding all things by the word of his power. A. Not only the creator, but also the sustainer of the universe, Colossians 1:17. In him all things consist. 1. By his word the universe holds together. 2. All he has to do is say the word, and the universe is no more. B. Note well. 1. This illustrates the power of his word. 2. Shall we not listen when he speaks? Luke 6:46. 6. Jesus has also, by himself, purged our sins. A clear reference to his death on the cross for our sins. B. He speaks to his role as our Redeemer, a theme that will be prominent later in this epistle. Hebrews 2:17, 9:26, and 28. 7. Jesus has also sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. A. This Jesus did when he ascended to heaven. Ephesians 1:20 and 1 Peter 3:22. B. Sitting at the right hand of God is a place of honor, but for Jesus it is also a place from which he reigns. 1. As indicated in Ephesians 1:21 and 22 and 1 Peter 3:22. 2. It is true that he is waiting for his enemies to be made his footstool, Hebrews 10:12 through 13, but he is reigning until that time, 1 Corinthians 15:25 and 26. 3. As stated in Psalms 110, 1 and 2, from which the author to the Hebrews quotes, the Messiah was to rule in the midst of your enemies. C. Thus Jesus is truly the ruler over the kings of the earth, Revelations 1:5 and 17:14. Conclusion. 1. The sentence does not end with verse 3. A. It continues on into verse 4 with a declaration of Jesus' superiority over angels. B. But that verse and the rest of the chapter we shall save for the next study. 2. But what have we seen in this lesson? A. God is clearly a God who speaks. He makes his will known to mankind. B. And now he speaks through his Son, who is 1. The appointed heir of all things. 2. The Creator. 3. The brightness of God's glory, the express image of his person. 4. Our Sustainer, Redeemer, and King. How can we turn our back on him, especially when the Majesty on high proclaimed at the Mount of Transfiguration? Matthew 17:5. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. Are you heeding the words of the beloved Son, God's perfect spokesman? Matthew 28:18 through 20 and Revelation 2:10. Here ends our study of the Epistle to the Hebrews, Part 5, God's perfect spokesman.